Hello! Let's start with the sound on. Hello, this is a live lesson all about translations. It's part of 4 lessons I've done on transformations. I've done reflections, rotations. Go back and have a look at those ones. This is to help anyone who wants to do some more math during the lockdown. I know it's half term, so I don't expect everyone to be here live. I also was quite slow to let people know that this was going on. So, because I've got all sorts of baby things going on right now. But people can come back to this, take a look, watch it whenever they need to. It's also going to be on the channel whenever people are doing translations in class and want a bit of help. So I'm going to go straight into how translations work, what they are, and tell you some stuff. So, as well as saying good morning to Alicia, who's here with us live, and anyone else who joins during the course of the lesson, we are going to be looking at what translation is. Now, translations in languages do help us to see what translation would be in maths. Because in languages, a translation is where you've got the meaning to something doesn't change. All that changes is the language that's being used to convey that meaning. For example, my family's half Italian, and if I wanted to say good morning, I'd say buongiorno. Now, buongiorno means good morning. The meaning is exactly the same, just 2 different languages. Now, why am I saying this? Well, the reason I'm saying this is because in maths, the translation keeps the shape exactly the same, which is like the meaning of what's being said. The shape stays the same, but where it is changes. Now, translations would be used a lot in computer graphics. You wouldn't get to see this, but even right now, if I wanted to program something to happen, like in my intro, I programmed a thing to move around, there will have been behind the scenes in the computer coding some vectors that were used. What do I mean by vectors? Well, if I switch over to here, I've started on page 2, so it's best to start on page 1. We've got an XY grid. Translation is going to allow us to move things from one place to another using a vector. And this vector will be an amount as a number and another amount as a number. And the top amount tells you how long to go along, and the bottom amount tells you how long to go up. So, if I'm doing this vector of 2, 3, and I'm doing a translation of vector 2, 3, I'm going to take this point here that you can see in purple, and I'm going to move it along 2. 1, 2. I think when you're first learning this, it's best to draw on there the actual movements. Once you get practiced at it, maybe you stop doing that. But I'm all in favour of things that mean that you don't make the silly mistakes. 1, 2, 3. I then get my new point. Now, just like we talked about in rotations and reflections, those videos are both available. What I'll try and do is learn how to, at the end of the video, put the rotations and reflections ones as links as well. I'm sure there's a way of doing it. I just haven't mastered YouTube that much yet. So 2, 3. This is the new place. In the other videos I talked about this is the object, because this is where we started, and the image is where we come to after our transformation. So after we've moved it, what has effectively happened is it's moved like this. But it's gone along 2, up 3. It's not just points that we're going to be using. We're mainly going to be translating shapes, which is why I had us originally on here. Let's say this wanted us to do a translation of the vector. We'll keep it simple to start off with, 1, 2. What I do when I'm doing this is I go, let's choose a point. You can choose any corner you want. You can see I've chosen the bottom left corner. I am only going to translate that bottom corner. Along 1, up 2, and put another dot. Now I'm going to rebuild the shape from that bottom corner. So you can just see, not the neatest job of it, but you can see I've rebuilt it. I'm going to do it one more time because I want it to be a bit neater than that. But you can see it's the same shape. The shape hasn't moved. Just like in translating in a language, the meaning hasn't changed. All I've done is use a point. Now notice, if I'd have chosen a different point, let's use green. If I'd have done this point instead, along 1 up 2 still takes you to the same point on the shape. So you only need to do 1 point. My goal here is just to demonstrate it doesn't matter which point you use, you'll be able to rebuild your shape from it. Right, so that's how we would work that one out. But what about moving down or left? To do so, we can change it to using negative numbers. If I do -4, 2, that instead of going, it still goes right a negative amount of numbers. So going right a negative is effectively the same as going left 4. I'm going to again use this point, 1, 2, 3, 4. But this one still moves up 2, 1, 2. It's only the going right one that's gone negative. So we're going to go here. That's the new point, and then I build, as before, my shape from the new place. It needs to be identical. So there's my shape that's been moved. This would again, just as I've been saying before, this is the image, the original, I often like to shade in, is the object. Because we start with an object and the image is after we've done a transformation. This transformation is called translation. We can also use negatives to go downwards. I don't even like the word downwards. Just down, I think. I'm going to just use the word down. So we're going to go, this one we're going to change to go, we're going to get rid of this image and this transformation, but we're going to keep the same object. Oh. How do I get rid of that? There we go. We're going to now go along 1, down 3. To go down, I put a minus in the up and down thing. So it's still going to go along 1, 1, 2, 3. I'm using that same corner again. This is the new corner. Now I'm going to make the new shape. Make the shape. It must be exactly the same. Because if it's not the same, then we've changed it in some way that was not relevant to a translation. Translation keeps the shape exactly the same and moves it a certain amount along and then up or down. I can even go left and down by using negatives. So if I use instead -4, -3, once more, I'm going to use that corner. I'm going to go left 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 3, 1, 2, 3. The negatives have allowed me to move left and down where normally it moves across and up, right and up. Once again, I'm going to copy my shape from the original because the meaning of the word doesn't change in language. The shape itself doesn't change in maths. The shape has stayed the same, but I've just moved it. Translations are for moving. Now, if you're year 10, 11, you might actually be interested to know that you can even do this in 3 dimensions. This is what happens in graphics. Computers don't tell you this is what they're doing, but graphics are made because vectors can move 3 dimensions. They have, as well as being along and up, there's also like depth as well. So we have normally X and Y we talk about, but there's also Z. You could have vectors that are like 2, 3, 7, which would move along, up, and then into to allow you to have 3D graphics, and that's where 3D graphics come from. Vector graphics. They allow the ability to move things around via vectors. Now, you may have, if you've done any graphics work and any graphic design things using Adobe packages or other things, you'll know that there are things called vector graphics. Vector graphics exist because they exist as numbers, so you can do maths on them, and the numbers themselves, you can double them and change that to like 4, 6, 40. So there's all sorts of vector graphics beyond what we're learning today. Now, what sort of questions would you need to be able to do this with? Well, I've been mainly focusing today on doing them on a grid, because that's the sort of thing that you need to be able to apply them to. Not just doing them in space, but doing them on a grid with numbers so you can see what would happen to the points. If I look at my next question, here is a question. Now, in the description below the video, there is a link to a Corbett Maths worksheet, which I think is very good. It's got the answers as well. Try this out, practice it, get good at it. This is one of the questions. This is question 7. I've gone into question 7 because I wanted to go a little bit deeper than just the first question on here and show you. This is a 2-mark question. So there's 2 things we need to get right. We need to get how far it goes across and how far up or down. Well, the first thing I do is I go, well, that tells me to go left 3, and that tells me to go up 1. The reason it's left is because it's minus. So I'm now going to choose a point. I often choose the bottom left corner. I've chosen the bottom left corner. I'm going to go along 3. 1, 2, 3. All of this is allowed to be drawn on there, and then up 1. There's my new bottom corner. I can now, if I wish to, rub out that bit and just show that's the new corner. And then I'm going to draw my new shape. It's got to be exactly the same. Ink to shape, so I can keep it the same notes. It's still allowed to go up to the line. Using this, you would in fact be allowed, and I'm going to call it A dash. You may remember from the previous video, A dash is another way of saying this is after we've done the transformation on it. This is after the translation. And get rid of that so I can make it an arrow. And you can see it's just moved up like that. This will be 2 marks. I've correctly done along and up and got the shape, and I've even labelled it A dash just to show exactly what's going on. The final thing you might be asked to do is you might get one where it says identify the translation. It might even say identify the transformation. Then you have to use this word in your answer. So you'd have to say your answer is a translation of. But let's actually have a shape that's, otherwise you're just saying, well, what question are we talking about? Let's say I've got this, and I've got this. The reason I know that it's not a reflection is because they both point downwards. If you can see, the direction of this is pointing down, and the direction of this. So it's not. If it was a reflection, it would flip over. I know it's not a rotation because the fact that it's pointing downwards and pointing downwards, it's going to. If I rotate it, it would point upwards. If it was 180 degrees. If it was it might have a rotation that fits about here of 90 degrees, maybe about here, but we can spot quite easily that this is the same shape. And when you spot that it's the same shape, give or take, I know there's a little bit of a wonk there, but you'll forgive me a bit of wonk. So what I'm going to do is kind of in reverse. Choose a point. I'm going to choose this one. Count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and we're doing it in reverse. So this is a translation of, and we're going to call this A, of shape A by the vector 4, 3. And we have to say the going along number first and the going up number second. If it was going the other way, we'd have to use negatives. But this is identifying a translation by stating what is going on by looking at the shape, looking at the fact it hasn't changed, so it's just a movement. Now, one common thing I see at GCSE level, which I'm mentioning mainly for those year 9s and 10s who are watching, when you are doing this, if it says identify the single transformation, you cannot then say, oh, translate it to here and then reflect it. Single means you're only allowed to do either translation or reflection or rotation. And this is a common thing. I've seen people do, what's this transformation? It's a rotation and then it's a reflection. And their method would work, but they forgot the word single means they had to do it in one step, and it could have been done in one step using a translation. So this is just something to keep your eye out for. The word single is often there. This was, as it wasn't supposed to be a long video, like I say, in the description below the video, you can see I have done a link to a Corbett Maths video. There's also on Corbett Maths a 5-a-day thing, which I really think, especially given lockdown, it's a good idea to keep going on doing the 5 a days. They've got one for every day, various different levels. So you can do foundation, you can do intermediate. There's all sorts of different levels on there. You can have a go at them. The answers are there for you, but it means that you're doing a variety of maths and keeping fresh, because what you don't want to do is get back to schools when we do finally get allowed back in school and you're struggling, and then we're coming on the channel going, I can't do this and I can't do that. One thing I have been thinking about is how I'm going to continue this after lockdown ends and things like that. I might be back at school soon. What I will probably do is move away from live videos and just do maybe one live video every fortnight or something, or a primary one on a Saturday one week, and then a secondary on a Saturday the next week, or in the evenings to help with homework, so like a homework support one, so that you can come on and just ask questions about how to do certain things. But that's something for the future. Thank you very much for joining me today. I have been Mr. Harris. You haven't. You have hopefully learnt about translations. I love to see anyone who does that. And there's also a Taskmaster challenge for the week, which is I want people to design the best water park they can. Use this half term and the heat and as an inspiration to design a water park. Maybe for your back garden, maybe just a huge water park with flumes and slides and lazy rivers and all sorts of different things going on. I want to see creativity. I want to see these things. Now you can see on the side of the screen, you can see how to email things to me, how to go, which Facebook group your parents can use if they want to send pictures. Send me your work. I'd love to see it. Thank you very much for those people who've joined me. Hello Eddie. Hello Alicia. Thank you for joining me. Anyone who joins later, hope you learned something about translations. Let me know in the comments below if there's any questions that I've left unanswered. So maybe you're doing your translations homework and it's September and you're like, oh, but what about this? Put them in the comments below. I will then get them, and even if it's 6 months ago, I can still answer questions to how to do things and help you out with your homework. Take care. I've been Mr. Harris. You haven't. Look after yourselves.